Hello, everybody. I don't know if we're going to get like loads of people in straight away, or this is just for the repeats. But hello. This is the first episode of a new series that should be a lot of fun, and I'm hoping to be quite creative with the guests, so it won't be like the obvious people that do live streams with me all the time. It'll try and get. I've got someone in line who's a frequent commentator on different people's videos, so I think a lot of people enjoy seeing her appear, which would be good. So she's up for it. So yeah, this is a series of streams, just people talking about their favorite films. So I've called it Desert Island Flicks, and it'd be good to give a shout out to Sean because Sean D. Standfast kind of initiated my idea because he was doing the Desert Island books stream, which was brilliant. I think me and Mark did that one, and Sean did it himself, and there's all of them are brilliant. So check out Sean's Desert Island books series because it's really good. And I was just thinking, I think a lot of people like talking about films as well, so it'd be nice to do something like that. And we're doing it live, so Sean did it as a recording, but we're doing it live, so you know, in that sense we're more
adventurous. Oh, I don't know if I've gone off or Gareth's gone off. Can anyone hear me, or? I think I'm still connected to the internet. Looks like it. I can see Dave's here, Dave and Olive. Oh yeah, so you hear me. So Gareth's gone. I've taken over his show, Desert Island Flicks. The funny thing is that I think I was the first guest on Sean's Desert Island books as well. So I don't know if that bodes well or not. But I guess I'll carry on maybe while he's not here. Yeah. So yeah. Yeah, it's going to be quite bizarre for people logging into Gareth's channel and seeing me there alone. So I don't know too much about Gareth's plans or how it's going to be and whether it's going to be fortnightly or not. But oh, he's back now.
Hello.
I was just laughing so much because you're like, we're doing this live, which means. And you disappeared. So.
Yeah, it means anything can happen, and there we go. So if that's not proof it's live, I don't know what is. So yeah, while I was doing that, because I've got the chat thread going up, which I haven't put on the screen yet. But Dave has asked if we're doing this every 2 weeks because he's having a cheeky nod about the word fortnightly. It's freaked everyone out, Mark. Using the term fortnightly, everyone's freaked out. It's going, what does this mean? But there we are.
It's better than bi-weekly because I never know if bi-weekly is twice a week or every 2 weeks. So
yeah, bi-weekly sounds odder to me. Yeah, you're right. But no, we won't be doing it that frequently because I don't want to get too too obsessed with my YouTube channel. Basically, I'm doing enough as it is. So yeah, I think it would be nice to do one a month. That's what I'd like to do, one a month. But we'll see. So yeah, because it's live, we're going to have a live chat going on as well. So we'll bring up the comments as well. But the idea is that we'll be bringing up 10 films that Mark has chosen as his Desert Island Flicks. So basically, films you wouldn't want to do without. Someone is going to start talking about, well, how are you going to watch a film on a desert island and all that? Yeah, I don't really care about that. I think we need to get behind the concept and just relax. But yeah, 10 films, and it'll all be about Mark's favourites. I've seen some of them because I've seen the list. I've seen some of them, but it'll be really cool to find out why Mark loves them, and hopefully you guys will have an opinion about them. We can have a nice old chat. And actually, before we start on your 10, Mark, on your live stream you did yesterday, when you started talking, you ended up talking about the films loads, and once I went, oh hello, it was like took over the chat, didn't it? But you mentioned Amelie.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Amelie is probably, I haven't done mine yet, but I think that might end up in my top 10. I absolutely love that film so much.
It's a
It's
great
such a
film.
brilliant
You know, I could have put it in there as well. That's what I mean. It's a very hard thing to do, and probably the list could change on it. You know, if you'd asked me at a different day, and also other films came into my head later that I wanted to put in that I hadn't put in originally. So I guess it's not necessarily my 10 favorite films, but 10 films that are important to me and 10 films I really, really like. But of course, there could be 50 of them at least. So
yeah. I used to get obsessed with lists when I was in school, and I used to constantly do. I remember I would have been about 14, 15. I just kept doing my favorite films. I could rattle off 100 really quickly, and I just keep doing them. And then they change a little bit, but you get these sort of regulars up there all the time. And you know, I think me and my mate, when I was about 17, used to do this regular thing where we'd come up with our 20 favorite albums, and we, you know, again, similar ones would come up a lot. But I don't know, there's something kind of nice about lists, isn't there? There's something quite cool about lists.
yeah, I think it's nice if you've done them from an early age as well. Then I think it could be interesting to see how they've changed over the years, because I'm sure if I'd done this list 20 years ago, it to be honest, actually, it could possibly be similar looking at the age of some of these films. I mean, there's nothing really new on that list at all. But yeah, I mean, things like if I'd done it while at university, you know, the Godfather trilogy would definitely have been on there. I couldn't stop watching it. Goodfellas would have been on there. The Shawshank Redemption I mentioned before would have been on there. They're all wonderfully amazing and fantastic films, but the thing is, although I can pretty much watch them anytime, the emotional connection to the films isn't there in the same way as it is perhaps to the list that I've given you. So
yeah, okay, cool. I was going to think of something else, but then I remembered I mustn't forget that we're gonna start off with a question that's not related to the 10 films yet. So we need to make sure to remember that. But I was going to say something else, but I forgot what it is. But anyway, yeah, let's crack on with your side of it. So tell me, Mark, we're going to start this with every single one of them. What was the last time you went to the cinema?
I can't remember the exact. I think it was November, maybe. It was the opening day of Ridley Scott's Napoleon.
Ah,
and that's 3.5 hours or whatever it was. 3 hours of my life I'm never going to get back. So.
Yeah. So do you feel like knowledgeable enough to know where the inaccuracies are?
I think so, but you know, I'm a huge fan of a film that was originally on my list, right? Which I've removed in favor of another one today, which was the 1970 production of Waterloo. And in that film, it stars Rod Steiger as Napoleon. And he is absolutely fantastic. Whereas, unfortunately, however good Joaquin Phoenix may have been in something like Gladiator, he just didn't do it. It just didn't do Napoleon for me. You know, Rod Steiger had emotion. He had character in his portrayal. Now, granted, of course, the Waterloo film only concentrates on the 100 days in the lead up to the Battle of Waterloo, whereas this film tries to get Napoleon's entire life, at least from his rise to power and beyond, within the time frame of the film. But no, it didn't do it for me. And to be honest with you, I think I'm not sure how much actually of a Ridley Scott fan I am looking back on it now, because I enjoyed Gladiator very much, you know, when I was when it came out when I was at university, and I think I might have even seen it twice in the cinema. But I don't know. There's just something wrong with them. One weird thing about the Gladiator film, which I think a lot of people maybe know now, but probably didn't think of at the time. I don't know. Are you a big fan of Gladiator?
I loved it, but then I did realize that I think a lot of the groundwork is done by the music. The score is incredible. And I think that is a lot of the reason why it's such a good film. But it is a good film. But yeah, I do think the score carries it a bit.
Well, I mean, the very strange thing, and I must apologize. Unfortunately, every time I come on and do a live, Elvis decides to be extremely active. So if you hear squeaks or noises or violent thrashing about, that's what he's doing in the background. But
it sounds like you've got a duck in there as well. Have you got a duck in there?
It's not actually a duck. If he relinquishes it, I'll show you. It's a giant beaver that has this really weird.
Yeah, show us your beaver, Mark.
Yeah, well, yeah, all right. And if you're ready for it, here you go. And
that's amazing.
When you squeeze it makes that weird sound. So, yeah. But anyway, the weird thing about the opening scene of Gladiator was I remember at the time sitting watching it in the cinema, and I thought, hang on, I know that sound. I know that not the musical soundtrack, but like the atmospheric soundtrack or the chanting and the stuff that the ancient Germanic tribes were doing in the forest. And I realized they're Zulus. They're not. He ripped, allegedly or whatever. I don't know if he has officially admitted or whatever.
Yeah, that's a bit weird, isn't it?
When you hear it, it is the same chanting from the film Zulu, which we may or may not talk about in a bit later.
But that's got absolutely nothing to do with Gladiator, is it? So that's a bit random, isn't it?
That's the really weird thing. I don't know, obviously, if somehow it's been changed or whatever. But if anybody goes back and watches that and then listens to the sounds the Zulus make in Zulu, it is like bizarre. Now I understand, of course, it's got that menacing, because you can't see them and you can hear them. But it was really bizarre because I was sitting in the film the whole time thinking, I've watched Zulu a million times and I know I'm right. So this really weird, really weird.
The thing that really stopped for me is he'll always be the guy that did early on in his career. He did Alien and Blade Runner and Legend, which are three fantastic sci-fi fantasy films. So he's always going to have that. I don't think he's that reliable, though. I think he's done some very average films and films that are just okay. But he's also sort of been a bit of a whinger lately and going on about how he's moaned when people haven't gone to see his films. It's like, well, that's a bit like bad form, isn't it?
Well, I mean, his reaction to criticism over Napoleon was a bit, didn't do him any favors, I think, when, someone mentioned some French journalist criticized him and he's like, were you there then? No, so F off then. And you think, well, that's not exactly the best way to approach it, is it? Because you weren't there either, Ridley. Hate to break it.
It's the most bizarre reply,
I know you're old. I know you're old, but you're not that old. So
I did see a bit of interview with him where he said he literally didn't give a shit whether or not it was accurate or not.
Yeah.
And it's like, all right.
The thing about it is, I went in there expecting, of course, not to be accurate because a lot of Hollywood films. I mean, even the Waterloo film has inaccuracies in it. Zulu has inaccuracies in it, but I expected it still to be well acted, which I didn't think it particularly was. And the problem was with the subject was the whole thing just felt like a 2.5 hour trailer. It's like. Right. He jumped like 15 years in 10 minutes and stuff, and there wasn't always clear who was who. I think only because I, obviously loving history, as you know, we're part of historical and things like this, and I read a lot about the Napoleonic era and stuff, that I was able to work out who was who by the fact that I could, just guess from who would probably be standing in that room.
Yeah,
I always tell you, and I think if I knew nothing about it, maybe if I knew nothing about it, would have enjoyed it more, or I would have been completely confused. So it wasn't great.
That's the problem, isn't it? Because sometimes they assume you're going to know something, and know certainly the leading characters or whatever. But yeah, and there's such a waste because Napoleon is such an interesting historical character, and there's so many things that he literally changed the world in such a dramatic way. So many things came from it.
The only saving grace was I didn't pay for the ticket, so
that's good. Okay, so we've talked quite a lot about a film that's not in your list. That was clever, wasn't it? But that was the last film you went to see, so that's cool. So that's the first That's the first question. So so I have noticed I'm going to put up the comments before we go through the 10 films. I think otherwise we'll fall so far behind. Maybe we should look at the comments after every film or something. Maybe do something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I know someone has said. I think it was Randy has said somewhere in the comments. Do I need to get a list of 10 together? If anyone does want to do this, just please let me know because it'll be cool and it'd be nice to have. And if more people want to do it. Like if lots of people want to do it, I'll do it more than once a month because obviously it'd be a shame to go, I can do it with you, and then say, do you want to do it in 3 years' time? You know, that'd be a bit crap. So I can do it more often if people are interested. But yeah, I think it's Elvis. Awesome, bit of screen time.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay. So let's have a look at the comments, and then we'll get your 10 films. Do you know what order you're doing them in? Have you done them in an order as well?
No. That would be asking far too much to choose which was the favorite of all of them.
That would be cruel. Wouldn't it? If I said, if you're going to be, you'll be like, what? What are you doing? Okay, so Dave says we'll be happily fortnightly. Love it. That's good. Yeah, I went off for a minute. If you just arrived, there was a lovely moment where I mentioned the fact it was live, and then I disappeared. Yeah, all right, mate. I can see how our streams are going to go. So Randy's here, which is cool. Oh, hold on. Doesn't seem to like my finger. There we are. Sounds more fancy pants than bi-weekly. Natalia, awesome. Hiya. Wrath of Khan is a great choice. Oh my god. Oh no, you talked about Wrath of Khan yesterday, didn't you? Yeah. That's the thing that I could do like a list of 50 science fiction films, let alone any film, you know. So I was an 80s kid, so we were talking about the 80s, weren't we? And I was born in 1971, so that I was like when all those films would come out, like 83, 84, 85, I was the perfect age, you know. Okay. Don't believe in the notion that this is more about Wrath of Khan. Zap says hello. So this is that question that I noticed earlier. Randy saying, if you do want to do it, let me know. It'd be great, right, Randy, to get your list. That'd be awesome. Dave says maybe Elvis is trying to tell you he'd like some more screen time. That was when he was doing impressions of the duck, I think.
You want more screen time? No.
Got Brian's here. Hi, Brian. And then we got Jim. Hi, Jim.
Yes.
Yeah. It was great. You were going, maybe that one. Oh, maybe that one. Oh my god! And you were really struggling about all of your choices, weren't you? In the end.
Yeah, I was. Yeah. I've only made one change, but I've oxed you the change while the conversation was going on yesterday. So.
Yeah. Okay, so Randy says he's in. Brilliant. So we're going to get one from Randy at some point. Here we go. Brian says Ridley Scott's been leaning on were you there at least since Gladiator? Not sure why he bothers consulting with historians. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, the first Alien film, I was there, and that is accurate. So good on him on that one. Oh, cool. Randy's making a list. He's checking it twice. And Jim's making a list as well. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, exactly. So Randy's just a year younger than me. So yeah, we might cross over a little bit, maybe. I don't know. So that's cool. So there we go. So that's where we are with people chatting about what we said already. So let's have your first film, Mark.
Okay. All right. The order is going to be all over the place according to the list, but I know in my head what I'm doing. So I'm going to start off with probably the more controversial choice for a lot of people today. But I'm going to start off with the 1939 color extravaganza that was Gone with the Wind.
Oh
my God! I can hear coffee cups dropping. Yes.
I mean, it was. I'd say it wouldn't have been controversial to say that like 10 years ago. Do you reckon? About 10 years ago, I think it was still seen as a classic and shown a lot on TV. It's just not shown anymore over here. And And obviously,
I find that bizarre why it wouldn't be shown in the UK. There's no reason I can think not to, because
well, I don't think so.
The history, if it's sensitive anywhere, would only be in America, really. I think that, well, obviously, without getting into the finer points or whatever, but the history of the Civil War and all that stuff is pertinent really only to the United States. But it's just one of those films that I saw from a young age. I had just happened upon it actually. It was on television, and I just became completely enraptured by it. I think because it's definitely the longest film I'd ever seen, probably up to that point. And I remember begging my parents to let me stay up to finish it, because I think it started quite early in the evening. It started at like 7, but of course it was on commercial television as well, so there were adverts and things like that. So I think it was dragging itself out to well past 10 o'clock at night, right? So, and it was a school night. But I don't know, I just found it completely absorbing. And I know a lot of people's big complaint with it is that the first half is really good, but then the second half, after the Civil War and all this stuff, kind of drags out a bit. But I never found that. To be honest, I had a crush even as a kid, probably on Vivien Leigh anyway. There was just something about her. And I just really went on to like people such as Leslie Howard and Clark Gable as well. So it's just, I think, one of those films that I can just pick up and watch it anytime. If I've got a spare 3.5 hours, then I'm quite happy to watch it. I don't let also having, the funny thing is, having long had a love of this film, I'd never read the book before until last year, and I can appreciate that. I would say the book is more problematic than the film, definitely.
Yeah, I was going to say a lot of that was taken out of the film, wasn't it? The director made an effort to not dwell on that stuff, didn't he?
Yeah, I think a lot of it actually, though, seems to have come down to Gable himself, because he really was. I think there was something about, I think I'd read that they had segregation even on the set with regards to like bathroom facilities and things like that. And apparently, whether it's apocryphal or not, but apparently Gable went to complain about it and said he would threaten to walk if they weren't desegregated and this kind of
That's
thing.
Awesome, isn't it? I love hearing about that kind of thing. Yeah,
and he was a big supporter of Hattie McDaniel, the woman who played Mammy, as well. Had actually formed a friendship with her. Mammy's one of the slaves. Yeah, she's like the big.
Yeah, I've seen clips of the film, because this is just to catch up on that part of the conversation. This is one of the ones I haven't seen. So when I'm replying to Mark, it will be from a point of relative ignorance. But I feel like I've seen lots of scenes, and I feel like I've definitely got a flavour of the film, even though I haven't seen the 4-month full film.
I just think it, as I said to you before we went on, I don't choose a lot of films for their maybe cinematic significance, but this, I think, is cinematically significant. I think you have to watch it. I mean, the scale it was done on, the fact, of course, in 1939, the whole thing had been shot in color. Now, I might be wrong, but another film I loved as a child and could easily have been on the list would be The Wizard of Oz, which may have been a year earlier. It might have been 38. I can't remember, but it was also
39.
Yeah, also shot in color as well. But I just think that the whole scale of it, I mean, it's a true epic film. It really is, and just beautifully shot, beautifully acted, and just, I don't know, it's just, I haven't any special connection to it in terms of being from the South or being from the North or being American at all. Although it is quite funny, of course, that 2 of the main actors are British actually anyway, who are in it. But it seems to be one of those things in Hollywood, isn't it? There's lots of Brits. Maybe they work cheaper than Americans. I don't know.
Well, that was probably before the period where Brits were always cast as villains as well, because apparently we've got scary voices. Probably posh British people, not people like me. I don't think I'm scary. But if you were like going, I don't know, I want
Well,
you to die, Mr. Bond, or whatever.
I haven't seen any comments about Gone with the Wind yet on here, so either
Yeah.
people agree or they're just preferring
Yeah,
to.
let's open up to the chat. So we're going to go on to the second film in a minute. But oh no, I was going to ask you. Do you think there's something? Because when you were talking about how it felt to watch it, and I was remembering what the little bits I've seen. I kind of remembered that when I was a kid, I used to on Sunday afternoons there was always like these old films shown on TV, and I used to there was something very weekendy, very relaxing, and like switch your brain off. I'm not at school kind of thing about watching an old film like an old western on a Sunday afternoon. Do you know what I mean? And sometimes my stepdad would be there watching it, but ultimately, quite often, I'll just watch it on my own. And I used to love Burt Lancaster and Kirk Douglas and all that sort of blah blah blah. But there's something, I don't know. There's something different about watching something that's that old and still epic, still dramatic, but it's very you're very alienated from it. Do you know what I mean? It's not about you. Do you know what I mean?
For sure. And I think if you notice from my list, a lot of the films are old, not quite as old as perhaps someone like Sean Stanfast would choose, but old. At least these are talking films. But they all, a large number of them are born out of exactly what you said. They're born out of that Saturday or Sunday afternoon film, or during the summer holidays, they would have just the afternoon film on Channel 4 or whatever. And that's where they came from. And obviously, people I watched them with, whatever. This absolutely, it was.
I also think this might be a viewpoint, or it might be something that might be really profound. But since we've now got tons and tons of channels, or don't even watch normal TV and just watch streaming services, they're not shoved in your face in the same way. So when you didn't have as much choice, you'd watch them just because it's there, and you'd discover stuff. And now you're not going to discover it because you can avoid it, aren't you?
Most of us. I mean, because I grew up in Bermuda, and we had only one for the good few years. We had only one TV channel, right? And then I think when I was probably about 8 or 9. We may have got cable, and of course most of that came from America. But even when I was visiting the UK, visiting family and stuff in the UK at the time, there were only 4 TV channels. I mean, maybe some people had B Sky B or Sky as it is now, or whatever, but not many people. So most people made do with just those 4 channels, and you didn't have the choice. I mean, I don't know about you, but I remember going over to my grandmother's house, and would go through the TV times or the radio times or whatever, and look at what was coming on in the afternoon, circle it and get ready and be excited about it and all that kind of stuff. And it was great.
Yeah, the Christmas radio times. Yeah, all right, let's get the comments up. So MJ's appeared. So let's get her hello up. Hello MJ. Thanks for popping in. I'd realised actually that this is normally the time that MJ does a live stream, so it's kind of good that she's not doing one this week, otherwise that would have got a bit awkward. So Beth says still love Gone with the Wind. Brian says I'm sure it's a problematic opinion nowadays, but Mammy is the best thing about Gone with the Wind, and Brits can often do good southern accents. That's good. Is it problematic? I mean, if that's praise, isn't it? I mean, Mammy saying Mammy's a good thing about the film is a good thing, isn't it? I would say that's like a modern thing.
I mean, I suppose the thing is, I guess what's problematic in general about the film is, of course, the whole romanticizing the Confederacy, romanticizing the South. But it is certainly I would say it's much, much less problematic than the book. There's no racial, as far as I can remember, and I've seen the film loads of times, I can't remember any racially sensitive language. Yeah. I mean, there's no N word. I mean, in the book, it's really.
Mammy's quite a full character, isn't she? She's very well-rounded, isn't it? She's not just.
She's a big character in more ways than one. Yeah. I mean, and I guess it's kind of problematic in the sense that, how realistic is it that, like, for example, in the book, I don't think it's a spoiler because we know what happens with the war, but Mammy's not interested in freedom. Yeah. You know, she's
Right.
been with this family for so long. It's like, I'm too old to change my ways, whatever. And she thinks it's all
I
alone.
think that's what Brian's referring to when he's saying it could be a problematic opinion statement. Yeah.
Well, I think she was. I think it's also the way that Hattie McDaniel portrays it, because I know a lot of people were and are now, they don't like the subservient nature of it and the kind of I don't know the word, that almost the parody way of speaking that they would do, you know, like I can't do it, I'm not going to do it, but you know what I mean, the way certain blacks in the South would speak, you know, the cotton picking language kind of thing. I don't know if that's the right term. But
which was it was completely put on, wasn't it? That was made up.
I mean, she was a bit criticized for it, I think, by activists, of course, you know. But I think she made a comment herself, you know, but it made her fortune. What else was she going to do? You know, I mean,
well, there is that. Right, so let's get back to the comments. People have said some good stuff. So Courtney's here. Hi, Courtney. So Courtney might have something to say about Mammy, which would be cool. So I happened upon Gone with the Wind. Similarly, Mark, I was a girl not older than 11, and it was on TV. Yeah. So important. These are important moments, aren't we? When we see these big films, these big epic films. I remember. I'll always remember seeing. I think it's called The Greatest Show on Earth by with Charlton Heston in it. I think Burt Lancaster's in that. It's about circus. He plays and that's well long, that film. And I kept watching. I was watching so many times. But there's something very romantic about those epic films.
Yeah, well, Ben-Hur is another one, of course. And the funny thing is, I can never remember if I've actually watched it from beginning to end. I always just seem to catch the beginning hour, not the subsequent 5 hours that come later or whatever. So
yeah. And Natalia says, of course, it was a classic I'd heard of. I started watching it and was mesmerized. Fell asleep though because it's very long. Yeah. So Mammy is conditioned to her. She's conditioned to her situation. And I guess you know, there would have been people that would have been conditioned to the political situation as well.
Yeah.
Actually, Daniel did what she had to for Hollywood. Exactly. There were other better, more wider opportunities. Yeah, but that's exactly what Hollywood's trying to correct now, isn't it? I'm sure she would have chose something different. Yeah, and there are much more choices now, which is a good thing. So yeah, we've gone forward on that, definitely. I mean, there's another debate about whether we've complicated the thing as well, but we won't have that debate for a minute. Just because I don't know where we'd go with it. It could get all very hectic. I enjoyed the clothes most, but that's interesting. Yeah.
It's a very lush production. It is, and you know, if you see it remastered, you know, it's beautiful. It is beautiful. You know.
Sorry, Ralph's moaning. Are you all right, Ralph? Come here. He's just staring at me. Okay, don't come here then. I remember my mum took me to the video store to rent the VHS so I could watch the final hour. Oh, that's awesome. So yeah, because you couldn't record anything in those days, could you? If you missed it, you missed it. If you ran into your house knowing you'd missed the first half an hour of a film, you're like, oh, I'll have to watch it now.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. No catch up.
No catch up. People don't know they're born nowadays, do they?
They don't.
Okay, film number 2. I'll have to write down which number you're on because otherwise I'll forget. I'll go, well, that's it, we're up, and you go, I've got 2 more films left.
Film number 2 is a change. Yeah. So originally it was going to be the Waterloo 1970 production, which is an amazing film that you should watch if you haven't. But I've decided to substitute it for a film that is special to me, and it was mentioned yesterday in the live I did with those gentlemen from Sherlock Holmes Appreciation Society, which is Superman 2, which is a wonderful film. Now, Superman 1, of course, is what got me into Superman, although I can't remember exactly when Superman 1 came out. It might have been before it was before. It was a couple of years before I was born. Whereas I was probably 2 or 3 when Superman 2 came out. And yeah, I was just, again, mesmerized by it as a small child, to the point where I was bought a Superman costume that I just never took off. For days and days and days, I kept it on. I slept in it. I walked around in it. And I have photos of from us visiting places in Bermuda and whatever, wearing this costume out in public. While the rest of my family is dressed normally, there I am wearing my Superman costume.
That is brilliant.
Yeah, well, and it's just, again, for me, it's better. It's better than Superman 1, and I think it's, obviously, when you watch it now, I watched it not that long ago, and it is, of course, very dated. It's also a little bit cheesy. Of course, the special effects are nothing like what they can do today. But when you're a small child in the 1980s, it's magical. Yeah, it's absolutely magical, especially the whole fact that Superman faces, his great challenge of General Zod and his two friends coming to Earth, and he loses his power, doesn't he? And then he's trying to live without it, and things don't work very well. And yeah.
And I think Christopher Reeve does the difference between Clark Kent and Superman really well in that film.
Very rare, yeah. Because because I also liked it. I think it starts off in Niagara Falls, maybe, isn't it? I think.
Yeah. Because they're
like Margot Kidder is holding on to the edge and whatever, or that kid is. I can't remember. Yeah, and he flies down to save her. Yeah, but it's just the climax for me. Also the fact. I mean, not only have you got Christopher Reeve in it, and have you got
Terrence Stamp.
Terrence Stamp as General Zod. You've got Gene Hackman in it as well. So I mean, what more do you?
He's a brilliant Lex Luthor. I actually don't think it's that dated in its effects and stuff. I think when effects are dated, it's because things like you can really tell that rock is made of polystyrene and stuff like that. But do you know what I mean? But I think that it developed enough so that like the laser eyes and stuff like that, it's cool. That works. It's like I don't think Ray Harryhausen's old effects from the 50s are dated, even though clearly we've got a lot better, because it still works. Do you know what I mean? I think Superman 2's effects do work. It does have an effect, and you can suspend your disbelief. I think it only gets dated if you can't suspend your disbelief, I think. So yeah. No, I think Superman 1 I think is brilliant, but it's incredibly slow. And you've got to have a lot of patience, and you've got to kind of almost believe in the film to get through it in a way, because there's like great moments, and the concept and the way the design and the way and everything about it's great, but the pace it really lets it down. And I think that Superman 2 chucks all that out and just goes for it and just says, let's have a romping action adventure thing.
Yeah. And you just can't beat that ending, to a film. It's just so brilliant. When he comes out of that cubicle in the Fortress of Solitude and he looks beaten, and Zod tells him to kneel, and I just, you can see even how happy I am thinking about it there. And he's like, kneel before Zod. And he takes his hand, and just the crushing of the bones as Superman crushes Zod's hand, and he realizes, he picks him up and throws him in the pit, and then, Margot Kidder turns around and slaps, something? You're a real bitch. And then she falls down. Brilliant.
Yeah. I also really love the fact, just a little movie fact thing I think is really interesting, that the first and the second films were filmed at the same time, weren't they?
Yeah. But there was like a 4-year staggered release or something, wasn't it? It was like the next year. And
I think if more of those kinds of films were done like that, because Back to the Future was done like that as well, it does make that consistency, doesn't it? Which I think is really cool.
Yeah. And of course, you can't forget the soundtrack. You cannot forget the soundtrack to the Superman.
Yeah. Well, we might find that a lot of the films that everybody says are great films, the score is such a big part of that, because as I've said when I did my 10 favorite movie scores video, check that out, it's a good video. When I did, actually there are 20 movie scores, I couldn't just do 10, 20 movie scores. I went on about how it has such a huge impact on the film. It's ridiculous the amount of, we just take it for granted, and it's just so important. So yeah, John Williams, John Williams is a great composer, isn't he? So yeah, he knows how to do that epic scale with hooks you know,
Mhm.
which is a very special talent in it. It's a very specific talent. Right, let's have a look at these. When I have a look at the thread, the way I've got my phone and stuff, my finger gets really big on the screen. I don't think it happens with anyone else. It's like, hello. It's really, I don't know.
We're watching you.
I'm gonna have to look into what I'm doing there. Right. Anyway, let's get back to this. So, yeah.
Well,
So
I use the computer, so that's why it doesn't maybe show for me when I do it, because
yeah, that's a good way of
you know,
doing it.
I'm doing it with the
I can't
mouse.
do that. No. I remember going to the movies with my mum to see Superman 1, 2, and 3. Awesome. Reeves is the best Superman. I think a lot of people think that. So yeah, it's a fair shout. There's been quite a few of them now. There's been about 8, I think now. The trio make it. The female villain was a true role model for me. Yeah, and she was awesome. Have that women and be strong, powerful, and sexy. Maybe that's why I love Trinity from the Matrix so much, apart from the outfits. Yeah, and Carrie-Anne Moss has been really good in the Netflix Marvel stuff. She's been a lawyer in that, but she was in something else recently as well. What was that? I can't remember. Yeah, I don't know, but yeah, because she was obviously Trinity in those films. They got similar outfits now that you mention it. Who has? Who's got similar outfits?
The bad woman from I can't remember her name, friend of General Zod, and Carrie-Anne Moss in The Matrix, I guess.
Oh yeah, Sarah Douglas. Yeah. Sarah Douglas
black leather onesie or one jumpsuit or whatever it is.
So you haven't got that costume, Mark. You've just got the Superman one, right? You haven't got the
I don't have the Superman one anymore, of course, but I did have it for a while. Yeah.
Yeah, no, back then there wasn't a lot of tough female characters. Yeah. Wonder Woman was absolutely, and usually women would have been the kind of secondary role in a adventure film like that, wouldn't it? It would be like the villain had someone who he sort of barked orders at and stuff like that, which Gene Hackman did, didn't he? What was her name? Miss something Becker or something?
Oh yeah.
What was her name?
Oh, you're right. It's got me, Miss
Steve Becker, was it? No, wouldn't be that. That's a car. Don't know. Someone will say it in the chat. But yeah, he had that. They had that role, didn't they? And then obviously, Sarah Douglas's character in Superman 2 was much more of a good role model.
Well, because she helps him. She helps Superman in the first one, doesn't she? Because when they put the kryptonite necklace around his neck and he starts to sink in the water, she's the one who comes over and. Yeah,
that's really cool. And her acting's really good in that bit because you can tell that she's torn. She feels like she's betraying Lex, and she also has really warmed to Superman, and she feels like she's on the wrong side. And it's just really good that there's all sorts going on in her face. You know, it's all about the face and acting and movie acting anyway. And she does that really well, I think. Yeah, really cool scene. Beth says absolutely. The score is everything. Suspense, especially. I always. What was it?
Test marker.
Test marker. That's it. I knew it was something like that.
I had to Google it. Sorry.
And he was sort of shouting it all the way through the film, wasn't he? It was like part of the thing, wasn't it? I always start crying when the music starts at Sound of Moon part. Absolutely, yeah. That's everything. Cat suit. And that's going to be the next time we see Gal Bostina. She'll be in a cat suit. Yeah, I've said it now, MJ. Right. Okay. So it's the third film.
The third film, okay. The third film is actually Steven Spielberg film. Not one of his. I mean, it is well known, but it's not really one people go to these days, really. And I think it's a fantastic film, based off the autobiographical novel by J.G. Ballard, which is Empire of the Sun, starring a very young Christian Bale. So
yes, that's cool, isn't it?
It's a great film, yeah. It's got a fantastic cast as well. It's got Christian Bale, John Malkovich, Nigel Havers, Miranda Richardson, Leslie Phillips is even in it, among others. So it's a really wonderful film. Extremely moving. And again, the music. I have to say, Gone with the Wind has great music. Superman 2, or Superman 1, both of them have great music. And Empire of the Sun has also very haunting and fantastic music.
Which is probably John Williams again, isn't it?
It may well be. Yeah, except
'Cause-
he uses some kind of traditional Welsh music in it. So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Was it one you've seen or?
Yeah, I have seen that, and I've been collecting J.G. Ballard books, and I've not read masses. I've read one book and a bunch of short stories.
Mhm.
I've seen that film, but I've got a mission to eventually read all those books I've bought by J.G. Ballard as well, because I do think he's really interesting. So the one I've read is High Rise, which is really good. But yeah, that would be cool. Yeah, no, so that's a really interesting and good choice. And you're right, Spielberg doesn't really get that doesn't get mentioned when people talk about Spielberg. They always talk about his science fiction fantasy films and not necessarily his serious stuff. You know, exception to this, I guess.
And it's such a terribly, terribly moving film as well. It really is. You know, this poor boy gets separated from his parents, and you know, there's a really just brilliant part in it where he has a kind of breakdown whilst he's in the prison camp. I don't know who's watching now has actually seen it, but you know, this young boy Jim. He's living in Shanghai just before the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. When it happens, there's chaos. He gets separated from his parents. He ends up in a Japanese prisoner of war camp. And there's a moment where he just has this breakdown, and Nigel Havers, who plays like the camp doctor, kind of like hugs him and says, you know, it's going to be okay. And then he says to him, I can't remember what my mother looks like, you know. And it's just so, I don't know. It's just so beautiful. And it's a beautiful film, very moving, very well acted. Just, again, wonderful. And I watched it also from quite a young age. I mean, it came out when I was 7. I was probably maybe even 7 or 8 when I first watched it. I don't remember, but definitely 10. So
yeah, it'd be interesting to know how many of these are recent discoveries, or if these are all old films that you saw 30 years ago.
These are all films that I have seen more than 30 years ago. Yeah, I would say. So nothing.
Okay, so
bring me closer to the modern day.
we've got Moid here, which is amazing. Hello, Moid. That is a massive surprise. Are there any women here today? That's clearly a quote from Life of Brian, which I reckon Life of Brian will probably come up in some people's choices. So that's a nice reference there. But yeah, hello, Moid, and thank you very much for appearing. If you want to do a list of if you want to do an appearance on this series, then that would be cool. Jim says, I'm a huge fan of George Reeves from the TV series. He's revered now, but at the time, comics were for kids, and the 50s were not a good time for comics. Yeah, it's true.
And he was also in Gone with the Wind. So
right, who did he play in Gone with the Wind?
So there are twins at the beginning who are, well, we haven't seen it, but the Tarleton boys, they're kind of flirting with Scarlett O'Hara, Vivian Lee's character, and he plays one of them.
Wow. Okay, that's cool. Right, moving on. Hey, come on! You said it. You've literally said it. You've said the word catsuit. I might have added the other bits about you wearing it, but you've said it now. Almighty Ohms here. He says, "Good day, all. Hello, mate. Nice to see you." Yeah, George Reeves was fantastic. Him and the Lone Ranger TV shows. Lone Ranger. I used to watch that. Yeah, I'll tell you what. I was really annoyed by the last recent Lone Ranger film. It just seemed to be just taking the piss out of Tonto like crazy. And I don't remember that being a thing in the original series. I thought he was just his mate. Was he like a bit of an idiot? I don't know.
No, I never really watched it.
So. Yeah, I thought it was a bit weird. I DNF that film, to use our language. Natalia says she loves Empire of the Sun. Awesome. And that was another one that she saw with her mum. Yeah, Moy says hello. Almighty Ohm says, I love films, jazz, literature, books in all forms, philosophy, paintings. I find creative and art are boundaryless. Absolutely. Harvey would be one of my most fun. Oh, cool. Harvey. Yeah. That's a nice reference. Okay, I've seen the comment below. So he said, I'll be there. You go, right, awesome. And then he's put, maybe. Okay. But that'd be awesome. So let's go with the fourth film.
Okay, the fourth film is from 1984, the second most recent film in the list. So giving a little bit away there, I suppose. But it is actually by a Czech director, Milos Forman, who did One Who Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, I think, as well. But it's his 1984 adaptation of Peter Sheffer's play Amadeus, which is an amazing film. I think absolutely, again, mesmerizing, breathtaking, wonderfully done. Of course, completely inaccurate, but great to watch, with beautiful music done by, of course, well, Mozart, and I guess there's some Salieri in there as well. But yeah, I can't say anything bad about it as a film. And it has
a great central performance from Tom Hulce, isn't it?
Tom Hulce, brilliant in that. Just so, that whole laugh that he does, and F. Murray Abraham is fantastic as Salieri in that. Really, just brilliant. But it actually has kind of a special meaning to me, this film, because I first watched it in primary school, and I probably would have been maybe, let's say, 9 or 10. And as I said before, I was living in Bermuda, and I went to an all-boys school, and we had a new music teacher, and she was a really lovely woman from Ireland, very young, actually. She was, I think it was her first teaching job. And she came over there, and she just introduced me to classical music, which became a big love of my life, even to this day. So my first real contact with classical music came through her, and came through the fact that at the end of term, she got hold of the film Amadeus and put it on, and we watched it. And we all watched it as a class and loved it. And I went home, told my parents how wonderful it was, and we went out, that weekend, went to the video shop, rented it, and then we sat around and watched it. I don't think my sister was there. Maybe she was too young, or maybe she was sleeping over some friend's house or whatever. But the three of us definitely watched it, and it became a firm favorite. And why it's even more special, of course, is because it's filmed here in the Czech Republic, or at the time filmed in communist Czechoslovakia. But they were able to film in and around Prague, and the theater they use in this film is a real theater. Yeah, it exists. You can go to it in Prague. It's called the Estates Theater, and it's the only theater in the world that survives that Mozart actually played in. Yeah, it's the only surviving theater that Mozart actually played in, and it's also where he premiered Don Giovanni, the opera. Now, about 6 years ago, I was able to go to the theater and watch, unfortunately not Don Giovanni, but I say unfortunately, but it's not that unfortunate, because I went to see my favorite of his operas, which is The Marriage of Figaro. And I went to the theater to watch in that theater, the theater I had seen as a small boy in Bermuda, watching this film. Here I am now in the same place that it's filmed in a place that one of my music idols, Mozart, actually was in. And it was actually a very emotional experience for me. I started crying. It was terrible because, of course, the beautiful opera's there. I was there with a friend of mine, and she's like, "What's wrong?" And I said, "I don't know. It's just the emotion of the occasion has really got to me, But it was just brilliant.
That's wonderful. That's brilliant.
It came about because of this film, so that's why this has to be in the list. So,
but that's sort of happy crying. Yeah. We need that more often, don't we? That when we're so overwhelmed with a moment, and then you start crying because that's just magical, isn't it?
Well, it was because it was everything I'd ever dreamed of it being, and I don't think I could have had in that moment a more perfect experience. The 2.5 or 3 hours, whatever it was in total, sitting there in a box as well with a friend of mine, watching this, and it was done well. Yeah, I mean, and the thing is, it's not super expensive. Yeah, I mean, we tried to do it before. My parents and my best friend from England had flown over a couple of years previous to that to go to watch The Marriage of Figaro in the same place, but for some reason it got cancelled and we weren't able to do it. But I was able to do it on my own. Of course, it would have been lovely to have my parents there, but it was, and the thing was, it wasn't disappointing. It wasn't, so often when you dream about something or you want to do something, it might let you down. But it was just beautifully sung. The staging of it all was just beautiful, and it took me back to that film. All the while in my head, I'm seeing Tom Holtz doing the conducting of it. I'm seeing Jeffrey Jones kind of yawning because it's just a little bit too long, yeah, for him, as the Emperor. Just it's a film that I adore it. I adore the film, and I adore the love it's given me for Mozart and his music.
Yeah, it's an important landmark thing for your development of your personality,
Yeah,
right?
For sure.
Let's have a look. So we've got some other comments about other people. So we've got Almighty Arm says, I'm sorry I missed the list. I was reading. Only here. Would that have been an acceptable excuse? Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's the best. You're talking to two booktubers. That's fine. Haven't seen a lot of Lone Ranger, which is odd because I'm such a fan of westerns. Yeah, it was shown on our TV screens when we were kids, but I don't know how much it's shown over there. It was an American thing, wasn't it? Amelie is amazing. Watched F. Murray Abraham in Homeland. He's in Homeland. Such a great movie. So I need to rewatch. Yeah. Bootlegs of Astro Boy. Hall of the Mountain King. Hall of the Mountain King is a great piece of music. And they said, fantastic. It's that's why I love movies kind of film. Yeah, I think that's what we want to see in it. Like, these films should be films that make us love films in it, that make us love the cinema. And there's a great film about the cinema that I don't know if it will make my list of 10, probably make my list of 30, and that's Cinema Paradiso. I love the fact that film celebrates movies, doesn't it? It celebrates the actual cinema itself. That's pretty cool. I'm totally with Salieri about Mozart's laugh. Oops. Wonderful memory, Mark.
He was because I have his letters here, right? He was actually worse in real life than he is in the. He's a real nut job, but yeah, there you go. I don't know if I can say nut job these days. Sorry, you know what I mean.
I don't mind. Yeah. Al says, I didn't love opera until I was introduced to philosophy. Then the stories like the story from Lakme resonated beyond the aesthetics. That's interesting. So Moyd says, I concur with the Emperor. It was amazing, but a bit too long. The film itself. Yeah, when it was long. But yeah.
Too many notes.
Yeah. All right, that's your fifth choice.
Fourth choice, actually, I'm afraid.
1, 2, 3, 4. Now we've got Gone with the Wind, Superman 2, Empire of the Sun, and Amadeus.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I thought you said that was. I thought you said that was.
No. What's your fifth choice? Yeah, sorry. It's probably my pause of diction.
Okay, next one. We're going a little bit further back in time here to actually the oldest film on this list, which is The Lady Vanishes from 1938, an early Alfred Hitchcock film. Starring, from the top of my head, Margaret Lockwood, Michael Redgrave, Googie Withers, Dame May Whitty, and others. And it's, Hitchcock is brilliant. I could have had Rear Window is another one of his films that I love. I could have had that. Again, The Lady Vanishes, it was one of those Sunday afternoon films, but bizarrely, a Sunday afternoon film, not in Britain, but in Sweden, because at the time I was actually living there. And just remember watching it with my mum one afternoon, and we were just both, I don't know, maybe she'd seen it before, I can't remember now, but we just got so wrapped up in it, and it's so good. And I think it's been remade a few times, but you can't beat that. With it has Norton Wayne in it, who take on the role of I can't remember, Carstairs, and so it was a role they reprised a couple more times in films about these two kind of Englishmen who are desperately trying to get back to England for the last day of the Test match, and they don't want to get involved with this murder. So of course they start lying along with everybody else. Everybody's got something to hide, but just brilliantly done, and very entertaining.
Well, I mean, there's a reason why he was so influential as a director. He's made it also real, and compelling, doesn't he? And nothing he's done has dated.
No. I mean, consider it's 1938. Okay, so I mean, I'm sure you can get. I don't know what it's like on something like Blu-ray, but yeah, okay, the sound can be a bit high pitched from time to time or whatever. But the story is just as engaging, and it is based off a book. But I've forgotten again who wrote the book and the name of it.
Someone will say.
Yeah, it is based off a book. So, but yeah, I don't have to say too much more about that one because I know otherwise I could be here for hours. But I can move on, if you like, to number 6, which would be a 1951 film in this instance, and it's an Ealing comedy, one of 2 that will appear on this list. The first one is The Lavender Hill Mob. I don't know if too many of our American viewers would have watched this film, probably. But it did star Stanley Holloway and Alec Guinness in it. And Sid James is also in it. And
oh, there we go. That makes it required viewing. Sid James is in it.
Well, absolutely brilliant, yeah. But it's all about Alec Guinness works for I can't remember if he works for a bank or he works like for the National Bank or the Bank of England or something like that. But he's got something to do with gold, and he gets involved with wanting to carry out a gold heist. And of course, neither Alec Guinness or Stanley Holloway are particularly, hardened criminal types. Yeah, of course, that's where Sid James comes in, I guess. But it's all about them stealing this gold and how they try and get away with it. And of course, like a lot of Ealing comedies, dark comedies, whatever at the time, Lady Killers is another fantastic one. There's all sorts of kind of little twist at the end, but it's a wonderful film that if you have a chance to watch it, you should definitely do. And then again, with the Ealing comedies, and with quite a lot of films on this list, I do have to thank my grandmother for the introduction to these things, because there would be things we would watch together, and she would give me, when she used to come out and visit, wherever we were living, would bring the VHSs of them or whatever, and I could watch them. So I have, fond memories of a lot of these films because of her. So,
yeah, that's cool. And to me, the Ealing comedies kind of. Do you want us to talk about the other Ealing comedy, and then we'll go to the chat, and I'll just say what I was going to say about Ealing comedies. What was the other Ealing comedy?
I can do, actually. The other Ealing comedy is I was probably saving it to be number 1 if I had to have a number 1 best film.
Okay.
It doesn't matter because there's no real. Might as well keep them together, and it is probably my favorite film, and I share this in common with my mother. And it's Ealing's 1949 Kind Hearts and Coronets, which was based off a book actually as well, which I'm reading next month actually in a book club run by Carrie. I don't know, very very literary Carrie. She has this. It's a dark story kind of book club, but the it's not called Kind Hearts and Coronets originally. It's something like Israel Rank, biography of a killer or something like that. I don't know, but they renamed it to be named after the film, and it's just it is a dark comedy, very dark comedy, about a man whose mother was an aristocrat. His father was a lowly, penniless Italian opera singer who dies just as he's born, and so he's brought up only by his mother. And she fills his head with all this aristocratic stuff about his lineage and things like that. And then, sadly, his mother dies, and he writes to the family and says, "Can she be buried in the family tomb, family vault?" And they ignore it, or they turn him down. I can't remember exactly. So then he decides that he's going to get even with them, and he's going to knock off every single member of the family that stands between him and inheriting the title.
And they all played by Alec Guinness.
What's wonderful is every single member of the family that he has to bump up are all played by Alec Guinness. Yeah, brilliantly well.
14 roles or something, isn't it?
Sorry?
There's about 14 roles he plays in it, I think.
Something like maybe between 9 and 12, maybe something like that. And one of them's even a woman. So he does. Alec Guinness was fantastic, absolutely fantastic. Just yeah, and it's such a great film, and it has just I don't know how much of a twist it is for people today with things, but it just has a brilliant ending, and a very small cameo at the end there by Arthur Lowe from Dad's Army fame. So. Dennis Price is in it playing the son who tries to get his inheritance. Yeah, so fantastic.
Yeah. So the Ealing comedy. It'd be interesting to know how many of the Americans that are watching this know the Ealing comedies, because it is one of those things that you imagine might be quite a positive British export, like the Bond films and other things that we've done. Benny Hill. That the Americans like. I don't know that they probably like. Do they watch the Carry On films? I don't know how famous are the Carry On films over there.
I don't see those necessarily translating as well, maybe. But I guess
that's the thing.
Benny Hill
because it develops their idea of what Englishness is and Britishness is, doesn't it? Because if you have, it's like when they have like an American actor playing a British character with a Cockney accent or something, it's because they would have seen Cockneys in films and all that.
Well, you might laugh. Very nearly on my list is a good example of what you're talking about, which is Mary Poppins.
yeah, with the famous Dick Van Dyke accent.
Yeah,
which is legendary. So it'd just be interesting to know, wouldn't it, if they have if they've exported over there, or if it's just something that we know about that is because I think it is part of the same with. Actually, I do think the Hammer films is another thing that we created that have exported over there, and I think a lot of people who are into horror know about the Hammer films, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, I know, and I think Almighty Hill mentions it here. I know at least one of the Ealing comedies was made recently, or fairly recently, the last 20 years by Hollywood, which is The Lady Killers.
Yeah, the Coen Brothers. Yeah. Which I like that version. It's a good version.
Can't bring myself to watch it. Unfortunately, I'm just one of those people where I feel that when the original's perfection, why would you need to remake it? And I cannot see how you could replace, whether you like Tom Hanks or not, just Alec Guinness is Alec Guinness, or Herbert Lom is Herbert Lom. Peter Sellers is Peter Sellers. You cannot replace them. You cannot remake them. So I won't watch. Yeah. It's like Mary Poppins. I wouldn't watch the new one or whatever. I just.
Damn these new things.
This is the funny thing. I'm actually extremely non-conservative person in my politics, but I'm very conservative when it comes to my tastes. Into what I think is like, no, I'm not having any of this new nonsense. No remakes for me. Although there have been a couple of remakes that have been all right that I brought myself to watch. But yeah. Well,
I do think I think it'll be an interesting discussion in general, like a serious point about the whole remake thing. That. It's very, very rare to get a better remake, and usually it's for really naff reasons, like the effects were bad in the original, or or people don't watch black and white, so we'll remake it. Do you know what I mean? It's like, well, let's try and encourage people to watch black and white films.
When it's a well-known work or a well-known story, I mean, one example where I can think about actually enjoying all the three versions of it. 3 different films was Mutiny on the Bounty.
Yeah.
I like the 36. I think it's 36. Gable and Lawton. I like 60, whatever it is. Trevor Howard and Marlon Brando. And then I actually quite like as well Anthony Hopkins and Mel Gibson. I think did it as well in the 90s.
We're due for another one, aren't we?
Yeah, probably are. But all 3 of those were actually good. And they weren't exactly the same as well, which. Maybe helped. But
yeah. Well, I won't start ranting about I Am Legend, especially as Moyd's in the chat, and he says he doesn't mind inaccurate film adaptations. But I Am Legend, there's 4 versions of that bloody book, and none of them are like the book. 4 versions. It's like everyone's like allergic to doing a film like the book on that one. So. Al says, I would have to separate genres to make a 5 film list. Hitchcock alone would have 5. Yeah, I mean, it is really difficult to do. But hey, why not? Moy says, I love pretty much all of Hitchcock, but Vertigo is my favourite. I like Strangers on the Train as well.
Brilliant, yeah.
Yeah. And The Birds. I love The Birds. I like the weirdness of it.
Rear Window, though. Rear Window. It's so great.
Rear Window. No, you're right. Rear Window. Yeah.
But actually, that I don't know. Was it Disturbia they did in 2000 or late 90s? I can't remember. There's a film called, I think it's called Disturbia, which was a kind of remake of Rear Window, and that wasn't that bad.
Yeah. And then Al says, makes me remember Bell, Book and Candle. It's one of my favorites. Kim Novak, Elisa Mai, Irma de la Deuce. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Lady Killers, both classic and modern, watched together is awesome. Just saying, Tom Hanks, Alan Guinness side by side. Fair enough. And this was when you started talking about the Ealing comedies. So Moy agrees. The majority of one is a must for any film collection. I don't know that. What's the majority of one? Do you know that?
Rings a bell. It might be on. Might be currently on Netflix. I know there are a few of them they're putting on at least Netflix over here. 1961 romantic comedy. Oh, it's American. Starring Rosalind Russell and Alec Guinness.
They used to show the Carry On films here. Okay, they did used to show them.
Hang on, though. I want to say here, it's a bit dodgy, though. It says it's a love story revolving around a Jewish widow and a Japanese billionaire widower. And you look at the cast list, and Rosalind Russell plays the Jewish widow, and Alec Guinness plays Koichi Asano. So I wonder how that's going to play out.
Yeah, I don't think that would be.
Thank God it was Alec Guinness, not Peter Sellers, though, right?
Well, yeah, you got the they don't show it anymore, I don't think, but they've got that Peter Sellers film, The Party, haven't you?
Right.
And he's just going around going birdie num num, isn't he? And it's all a bit, it's a little bit dated. Let's just say it's a little bit dated. But yeah. So Jim says a lot of British movies are showing. Okay, so they do get some of our exports. It's not just James Bond. There's a weird Canadian show about a detective on the island of Newfies. Not sure why Central Europe would like it. Media is weird.
I think you mean Newfies, like people from Newfoundland.
Oh yeah.
They call
okay. That's fair enough. What does that mean? You're not replacing them?
Meaning that a remake isn't replacing the original. It's just adding to it.
Adding to the ether. Yeah, that's true.
Body of work.
Fine. Yeah.
Yeah, you do, Ben.
A remake can promote the original. Oh, okay. So Moy suggesting. I don't know if that's true because I don't think people would seek out the original. So I think that's a very generous way of forgiving remakes. Remakes and books into films and TV would be a great example. I do know of a few examples where the remakes not only were as good, some better, others are great together. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting mix, isn't it, of all sorts of things where some are great, some are okay, some are better than the book, some are better than the original, yeah. Bell, Book and Candle is my favorite Jimmy Stewart movie. Jimmy Stewart, he's really good, isn't he? They are not the book. No, they're not the book. He's probably referring to I Am Legend. I mean, there's like a martial arts film, but what's his name? Mark Damascus or something. It's called The Omega Man, and literally, it's a martial arts. It's ridiculous. It's such a ridiculous film, and it's like, what is this? This is I Am Legend. What are you on about? I might actually just rant about that in every single one of these shows and just start ranting about I Am Legend. I might do that. My little thing. Jim says, regardless of remakes, Maltese Falcon was remade 2 or 3 times till I got it right. Oh, okay. I think I only know the Humphrey Bogart one.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. They both played great parts. I know Japanese have zero issue with it, and Roz played a great part. In fact, the film's premise is partly about this fake offence that so many have. Oh, that's interesting. I mean, it's just different times, isn't it? They just wouldn't do it now, would they? So, like we were saying, more opportunities for people to act in their roles. 0 people look for the original. Yeah. More than 0 people. Sorry. Just read I'm Legend again. Well, yeah, definitely. I couldn't recommend that enough. It's my joint favorite book. So I've decided I have 2 favorite books. So I'm Legend. Yeah, because I couldn't separate. So I'm Legend and Flowers for Algernon. I love Flowers for Algernon as well. Have you read Flowers for Algernon? I think you'd like that, Mark.
Okay.
I think you'd actually like that. Because you're not like necessarily a massive sci-fi man, are you?
No.
But Flowers for Algernon is all about character, really, and it's definitely it's definitely the kind of science fiction that doesn't rely on science as much, if you like, but it is definitely science because it's all about scientific experiments. It's all about this guy Daniel, no, not Daniel, Charlie, who goes through these experiments to make him more intelligent. And it's all from reports, scientific reports. That's the kind of the format of the book. And it's just fantastic because it really does explore, well, what does that really mean? What does it mean when someone is of limited intelligence in their job and in their relationships, in their love, in their sort of romantic relationships? What does it really mean? And then when he gets more intelligent, how's that going to change his workplace, his family? Do you know what I mean? It's really, really cool. So yeah, really good film. Right, let's go to number 8 because we've stopped talking about films. Number 8.
So number 8, I will go with 1950s Disney's Treasure Island.
Treasure Island,
which I inflicted recently on the children at school. I made them watch. But actually, the funny thing is, like, because it's on Disney Plus, the funny thing is, I mean, these are, what are they? They were kids born, say 12 years ago, something like that. And I thought they would be really not impressed with it at all, but they actually really got into it. And they, because I made them, I gave them a sheet of questions to answer while they watched it as well, and they really surprised me. But for me, it is again another one of these special films because it introduced me. I think it introduced me to the book. I think the film came first, but when I was a small child, I had almost 3 sets of grandparents, right? I had actually my 2 kind of biological grandparents, and then my mother worked with this woman who was not far off the age of her own mother, but they became really close and good friends. And so when I was born, because their own children were a bit older and stuff like that, they kind of were involved in our lives and stuff. So every time we went to visit the UK, we would visit the grandparents, both sets of grandparents, and also this couple. And they were really, really wonderful. And the husband of this couple, who was, as I say, like a kind of third grandfather, he had a really dangerous job during the Second World War. He was involved in mine clearances in the sea, in the ocean. So he was with the Navy on the minesweepers, picking out these mines and stuff like that. So he was really interested in kind of nautical things. And I think one of the few videos they owned was Disney's Treasure Island. It was also something he enjoyed. The book, he loved, Robert Louis Stevenson and adventures and stuff like that. And he used to sit and talk to me about it. And we would watch the film. He would read part of the book to me. He would tell me other stories about pirates and all this stuff. And he just was a fantastic man who I have nothing but really fond memories of. And so therefore the film, is really, really special to me. And even watching it now, yes, of course, it's, it's old, but I think it's in its development of the public consciousness of what pirates are like. This is the film. This is the OG. This is, what do they call it? The GOAT, because all pirates subsequently speak like Robert Newton doing Long John Silver, and he just does it. It's just brilliant, absolutely brilliant, and I can't get tired of it. Even at the age of 40 almost 45, I can watch it anytime, and I just laugh along with it. With John Laurie from Dad's Army, the Private Fraser. He plays Blind Pew. You've
Yeah,
got
yeah.
is it Bernard Lee? No, who's the guy? One of the from James Bond, the James
Yeah,
Bond.
Bernard Lee, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's Israel Hands, and then you've got like Newton, Bobby Driscoll, and then it's just brilliant. It's just great, absolutely great, fantastic film.
So, big question: do you like Muppets Treasure Island?
I have no issue with Muppets Treasure Island. It's fine. It's fine, but it's not.
I had to ask, right? I had to ask.
Yeah, well, I mean, I like Tim Curry anyway. Yeah, I mean, he's great, and it's a lot of fun. But of course, actually, one remake of Treasure Island. I don't know if we can call it a remake because it's based on a book. So I don't know if any, because even this Treasure Island wasn't the original film version of it. Yeah, there was one in the 30s, probably silent versions before that as well. But I think one version of Treasure Island I did quite like. I think also starred Christian Bale, if my memory serves me right. I mean, it's not up there as a favorite. I want to say it's I don't know if it was Charlton Heston or Burt Lancaster. It might have been Burt Lancaster and Christian Bale.
Oh, okay. Don't know if I know that one.
So it was all right, but I can't say in this case that the one I love is the original. It isn't, but it is my original, if that makes sense. It's the first one I ever saw, the one I grew up watching, and just dearly love it. And I mean, how can you?
And as you say, it started how everyone's idea of what a pirate is and why they love pirates.
Just the look, the twinkle in Newton's eye, the way he plays Long John Silver. It's just you can tell he's taken this role and he's gonna have fun.
Yeah.
Pretty
People who eat up the scenery. It's all good. Always good. Let's see what the comments are like. Shut my hearties. All right. So Al just jumps on what I said earlier about Flowers for Algernon. One of my favorite books. It's such a great book. And it teaches us more about ourselves. Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a very deep book. Harrison Bergeron, book and film, relates, in my opinion, to today and the previous book. A remake? Blasphemy. Oh, okay. That was the last comment. So nobody's commented about that one much. So let's go to the ninth film.
Okay, the ninth film is from 1948, and it's The Winslow Boy. Is it one you've seen, Gary?
So this is one I haven't seen.
Oh, you need to remedy that, sir. It was one that was well, again, I don't even know if the 48 version's original as well. Actually, it might not be, but they did a looked like it was a good remake in the 90s, I think, with Nigel Hawthorne and maybe Jason Isaacs. Maybe I can't remember, but I'm not talking about that one. I'm talking about the Robert Donut.
What's the plot? Tell us the plot.
Okay, young little Winslow, the Winslow boy. He comes from a fairly well-to-do middle-class family. His father's actually a bit older. He's got two older siblings, the Winslow boy, and his father's just retired from a job in banking, and his son's going off to one of the naval academies. And everything looks like it's going well. The older daughter's engaged to be married. The older son's not quite sure what he's doing with his life. But what happens is the Winslow boy from the character suddenly finds himself at home one afternoon, in a surprise. Nobody knows that he's coming. And it turns out he's been expelled from school. He's been sent down from school for stealing a postal order for, I forget how many shillings it was. And obviously that's a disgraceful thing, and it's all very bad and whatever. But the father, played brilliantly by Cedric Hardwicke, says to him, tell me, my boy, tell me, son, did you do it? And he says, no, father, I didn't. And it then proceeds to this massive court case and things that captures the whole public's imagination, right? And it pushes the family. It kind of destroys the good things that were happening in the family before this. So because of her obviously being the older daughter and whatever, her fiance breaks off their engagement. It's set in Edwardian England, I should have said, actually, at the early part of the 20th century, or it might have been the late part of the 19th century. No, I think it's then. But it's all this fight that this father undertakes to clear his son's name, and it's a trivial. It seems like it's trivial, right? Because of the amount of money, it isn't so great, but it's all to do with like honor and doing right. And Robert Donut plays this very high level barrister who's also a sitting MP in Parliament as well, right? So it gets that far. It all ends up in Parliament. They're debating it. It's on the front pages of newspapers. It threatens to bring down the government and all this kind of stuff. And it's just so brilliantly done. It is really, really excellently done. Extremely watchable, even though there's not an ounce. I mean, it is. You are just watching the acting on the people acting. It's probably a stage play originally, actually, I would imagine, because it just lends itself to that, right? And I don't necessarily want to spoil it, but it all comes down to this. There's just a brilliant line about whether they are doing justice or whether they're doing right. And the lawyer says, justice is easy. Right is difficult to do, and it's just brilliant. And it's very emotional as well, just to see how much this father puts on the line to defend his young son, who's like, I guess he's only meant to be like 12 years old or something, 12, 13 years old, to take him at his word, and he risks the entire family's like status, money, everything to clear his son's name. It's brilliant.
That's cool. My wife's disappeared.
Oh no.
Cool, yeah. So I need to watch that. So I don't know about. But you were talking about films that could have been plays or were probably plays first, and I immediately thought of 12 Angry Men.
Oh, brilliant! Yeah,
fantastic film. Yeah, and there's another one that's been remade loads as well. Okay, so Moy's made a controversial comment. I thought you only supposed to have 8 picks. Well, I haven't even let him have a luxury. I'm such a fascist that he's not even having a luxury.
The luxury.
No, you can't have one.
The luxury of the last 2 films, right? So.
Yeah, right. We'll go with that. Yeah. So, this is another. Bye for now. So Jim says bye for now. I'll get caught up on the rest.
Before I reveal number 1, how outrageous!
I know, the last film left. Dave just mentioned that yet again. There's like sexual content on my live streams. This is. I
already showed you my beaver, didn't I? So
true. All right, what's your number 10? Go on. What's your number 10?
Is it number 10 or number 1?
Well, yeah. The age-old question.
It is probably number 1. And if anyone watched the live yesterday, I kind of spoiled it because they said immediately off the top of your head, "What's your favorite film?" And of course, it is my favorite film. And it's 1964's film Zulu, starring Stanley Baker and Michael Caine. Brilliant film. Now, again,
I think you've mentioned it in every video you've done, Mark.
Probably.
Or every live stream you've done with Sean. I think you've mentioned it.
I tend to mention either 3 Men in a Boat, Zulu, Treasure Island. I'm not one for variety, really, but I can't lie to you. It is probably my favorite.
Yeah.
And I know some people, I think, maybe have slightly misguided approach to it today, because I understand, of course, the imperial element is maybe problematic, but I don't think the film is racist. And, we can go into that some other time. But I think the way both sides are treated in it is fairly fair, especially for a film of 1964 as well. But how did I come to it? Basically, when I was 7 years old, I was struck down with chickenpox.
Oh.
Yes. And on television at the time, there was, I don't know if you got it in the UK, but I guess it was originally on South African television, and it was picked up by one of the American channels, and they started broadcasting it. And it was a TV series of Shaka Zulu. And it had a fantastic cast. Yeah, it had like Christopher Lee was in it, Edward Fox, Trevor Howard, Roy Dotrice, and Fiona Fullerton, was it? Is that and like
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
loads of well-known people were in it. Robert Powell as well. I can't forget him. He's one of the main actors in it. And it followed, of course, the story of the first kind of meeting between the English and the Zulus back in the earlier part of the 19th century. And I was just hooked on it. It was brilliant, fantastic. And I was sitting there having rewatched it on tape because we taped it off the television, probably. And, with chicken pox and whatever. And my grandmother, again, was visiting. And she said, and she was talking with my mother, and she was like, oh, what was the name? What's that film from, how at that time, I guess, like 20 years ago, So what's that film from a few years ago? What was it? And was it Zulu? Yeah, that was it, And you'll probably like that, Mark. And of course, I'm ill. My dad's like, okay, I'll go to the video shop and see what we can get. So he
the good old days of video shops.
He rented this film, and I was just hooked. I took out that film from the video shop. I cannot tell you how many times, right? And I think I was the only person to take it out as well. But what makes the story kind of sadder or sweeter, depending how you look at this, right? We left Bermuda in 1991. Towards the end of 91. And went away, whatever. 5 years later, 1996, my parents, my sister, they returned to live in Bermuda. I head off to boarding school. But of course, in the Christmas holiday, at the end of the first term, I fly out there with my grandmother. Actually, we flew out there to spend Christmas in Bermuda. And, it's still the late 90s. They're still renting videos just about, right? And of course, what film do I want to rent? It's been 5 years, and we go to because in Bermuda there's only really one video shop. At the time, there's only one place, same owner as well, who knew us, even after the 5-year hiatus. And I said, can I have Zulu? And he's like, I haven't seen you in 5 years. I knew you were going to ask for it, and nobody has rented it since you last rented it from the cast. But
you should have said, just have it, mate. Clearly,
you might as well. Might as well have done. You might as well have done. I mean, obviously, eventually, I did have my own VHS copy, and I had on DVD as well, and all sorts. And I think it's even on YouTube now. I think nobody cares.
I'll tell you what, Mark, as you love it so much, have you got like a special edition with like commentaries on it and stuff?
Yeah. I do.
Is the commentary good? Is it a good commentary?
Yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah, I mean, there were different things I didn't realize. So, like, one of the minor characters in it plays a guy called Sergeant Windridge, who does like the heavy lifting. He's quite a big, bulky guy. That he was, something during the Second World War, but he was also the stunt coordinator on the film as well. So he's on there talking about that. But he's a shriveled old man by the time he's talking about it, right? So it doesn't look like, it goes on. But yeah, from what I remember, it was quite good. And that's why it was quite interesting, because obviously they filmed it in South Africa under the apartheid regime, and there were some rules about the ways they could pay the Zulus. And I don't think they were allowed to give them any financial help. So instead, what they did was all the sets they built to last. Yeah, they didn't build them, so they were able to gift like the buildings to the zoo, all the cows, the cattle, and everything you see in the film. They gave.
That's amazing. They
found ways.
Things.
They found ways around it. Yeah, and a lot of the cast, found obviously their plight and stuff pretty harsh. I think the film really does make an effort to try to not be racist, whereas it could easily be racist, right? I mean, the fact is there's respect shown to both sides, and I think in that sense it's probably unrealistic, of course, but it's a good film. Great film. I
think the idea about the controversy over it and the sort of whether or not it's problematic or not, the idea of celebrating imperialism is clearly out of date now, But if you have a film that's got that setting and it's just that's the time and it's depicting something, that doesn't necessarily mean any particular bias until you've watched it, isn't it? And if it is bare-handed, then that should be respected.
I think if you changed it to if you changed it to some kind of fantasy, right? So if it wasn't actually a real people's a real people, a real tribe of people, if you had said it with aliens and whatever, the story itself, nobody of course would have any issue with it. It would be a rip-roaring adventure, which is what it is, right? And the fact is that happened. This film may be, as I say, in its quest to kind of not be super offensive, to try and, and to demonstrate the respect from both sides, probably in some ways does a bit of harm because it makes it seem like it, wasn't as bad as it was in that sense, right?
Yeah.
Whereas,
and I suppose that might be what dates it, in the sense that might be what people might not like about it, that it's not having, it's not showing the
I don't know. I think the biggest problem is a load of white men gunning down black men.
Okay, that's true.
But what they also don't think of as well is that, I'm not defending, of course, Britain's imperial policy, but I am. But I'm saying that, like, the Zulus, for whatever else, they weren't angels. Yeah, they weren't just sitting around peaceful, loving people. They were a completely warlike tribe who slaughtered their neighbors anyway, right? So just because they've come up against somebody who happens to be technologically superior in terms of firepower and stuff like that, it does make it look worse than it is. But they weren't just a bunch of peace-loving people. Maybe not. It's not maybe exactly like what happens in North America with some of the native tribes there, where maybe they were genuinely, some of them, peaceful people. The Zulus built a great empire off the blood of, off the blood of other Africans as well. Yeah, so it's a difficult thing. So I understand maybe why people have a problem with it, but I think, I defy anyone to say that if you're a 7-year-old boy born around the time we're born, who wouldn't find that a great film and have it stick with them. I mean, many people still cite it as one of the greatest war films ever made, and I think it is. So
awesome, right? We haven't got a lot of chat.
No, I've
stuff,
bored people with all my old movies.
Their eyes are glazed over.
That's it.
We've got a comment from Al saying Charles Gordon goes to the Sudan to hand out brochures.
Yeah.
Exciting new adaptation of cartoon.
with Corporal Jones.
So there we go. I think that's your 10 films, isn't it? I think it's been really cool talking about it, and I didn't really know how long it would be, but I think it's nice to incorporate the chats and stuff as well. So yeah, good, nice. An hour and a half is all right, isn't it?
I think so. I had fun, and I recommend anyone who's still watching, because you can see how many are watching. I can't, but anyone who is still watching.
We've got 11 people watching.
Oh, make your list. Come on, give it a go. I just thought, though, Gareth, I think I was Sean's first guest on Desert Island Books, so hopefully that's not a negative thing.
You're the first guest guy, so if anyone has an idea, you're the first one.
That's it.
Yeah,
I'm always up for it. You see, up for anything.
Well, you and Sean were doing live streams anyway, weren't you? So is that right? Were you doing live streams?
No. That kind of what started it off. Yeah. So
I
only came in as I was a substitute. Someone else couldn't do it, and Sean said, "Can you do it?" I was like, "Yeah, right then." So.
Well, part of the reason why I chose you as the first one was because we were chatting away on Voxer anyway. But I also thought it'd be nice that I'm not automatically choosing someone that's just going to do a bunch of science fiction films and obvious things that are like my favorite films. I thought, well, I'll just see what because I didn't know what you're going to come up with, and it's just been really cool to talk about films that I wouldn't necessarily talked about. More than half of them I've seen, and it's just been really cool. So I love it because it's a mate rather than just the films. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's you rather than the films. But as we go on, there might be some that might have similar lists to me, and maybe not. There might be someone who who just wants to list 10 Bond films.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, of course, so many left out of it, but we would be here for hours and hours if I tried to bring those into it. But no, I appreciate it. And
Go on, out of the ones that you didn't include, what's the most recent one?
out of the ones I didn't include, the most recent one, gosh, I'm trying to think. I mean, I had, I have a load of films from like the 80s that I love, the whole kind of John Hughes era, but they just, it wasn't the same. I couldn't say that they were like, they didn't merit necessarily to be on the list. But what I would say is because actually I'm just trying to quickly bring up my long list, which I have in front of me. Somewhere to say the most recent one is probably not doing too well here of being particularly recent. Yeah. Probably the remake. Actually, this is a remake I like more than the original, and it may be sacrilege, although I quite like the original. The True Grit.
Oh yeah. I love I like both versions, but I think I prefer the new version as well. So yeah, I think it probably is controversial because if you were born at the right age to love the original, then you might be like, why are they doing that again? But yeah, no, I think it's. I mean, I love Jeff Bridges anyway. I really love Jeff Bridges. But the one who plays the girl, what's her name again? Maddie. It's either Maddie or Matty. Yeah, she then went on to play a character in the Marvel series on Disney Plus. She was in Hawkeye, I think. I think that was her, but she was really good in that as well. So yeah, I think the that's a great choice. Yeah. So you were able to do something relatively recent. That's 2000s, isn't it? 2008.
Yeah, I had a couple of actually foreign films on my original long list, which I don't know why I didn't include. Things like City of God, if you remember that, with the
that's hard going though.
Yeah, Chungking Express, which I also really like. And then there was a fantastic Japanese film called Departures. I don't know if you got to saw that.
I haven't seen that one.
It was about a guy who I forget if he loses his job or whatever. He was in an orchestra, and he ends up getting this job, which he thinks is going to be for some kind of travel agency, but it's actually like a Japanese undertaker's.
Okay.
That's why it's called Departures. Yeah, but he thinks it's something to do with travel, and he ends up doing the whole kind of Japanese. Yeah, but it's an extremely beautiful film, but it's terribly, terribly moving. Yeah, because of course it's all about death and about a man who, because the way the Japanese kind of ceremoniously like clean the bodies and they put them in shrouds and this kind of stuff, I guess, according to the particular rites and stuff. But if you haven't seen it, check it out. I'm sure you'd really like it.
Yeah.
Beautiful soundtrack as well. So
that's awesome.
And westerns actually, there were a few, and I didn't include any of them. True Grit, High Noon, Tombstone, Magnificent Seven.
High Noon. I love High Noon, and I love the fact it's in real time. I absolutely love High Noon. I'll tell you just quickly about the Magnificent Seven. I'll try not to say this every one of these live streams, but that is definitely in my top 10. And one of the things that I find interesting that happened recently was a couple of years ago I was in hospital because of COVID, and it was all a bit scary. And then when I came out, it was like a dramatic kind of like my daughter came and got me with my wife, and we came down and we were all there. I couldn't really move very well because it took me weeks to recover and all that. And I was just sort of sitting here, and they said, "What do you want to do?" And I thought about it, and I said, "I want to watch the Magnificent Seven." So that's kind of like,
doesn't that tell you something though? The fact you've gone through all that, and the first film you go to is that one, right?
So and that was the first time I smiled in ages. Do you know what I mean? And as soon as I don't know, probably 20 minutes in or something. And actually probably not. As soon as the credits are rolling, I probably started smiling. But yeah, I remember feeling so different
with the theme tune. How can you not? I'm smiling thinking about it.
Yeah, back to the score. That's going to be our final comment. But mind you, we have comments. But yeah, our own final comment could be that it's always back to the score.
When you think about it, seriously, like a lot of those films I mentioned, even something like Zulu, the music in that is just so good for it. And of course, it's John Barry who does James Bond. There's all sorts of like links.
Yeah, absolutely. So Beth says this should make a great series. That's awesome. Moyd says agree. That's great. And then you might have been agreeing with you, saying True Grit remake is better. So that's from Moyd. Al says the modern film I think will be a classic is Midnight in Paris. Interesting. The original's not the same. But are you talking about the Woody Allen film? Is that Midnight in Paris?
It might be.
Yeah.
I'm thinking Last Tango in Paris, which isn't on my list.
Very different film. True Grit is a great example. I agree. Matty was better in the second version, but Rooster was better by Wayne. Okay, so he likes John Wayne more for that one. Solaris, Solaris was a remake as well. So that's interesting. So Moyd's saying that George Clooney, that version of Solaris is better than the original, presumably. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But Al says Matt Damon was a better LaBeouf. Yeah. I think Matt Damon's. I really like Matt Damon. So I think I've liked everything Matt Damon's done. And usually, if I don't like the film much, I think he makes it interesting anyway. And in my head, when in the early days when they first appeared, I used to get him mixed up with Mark Wahlberg, who's very different. He's got hardly any screen presence, and Matt Damon's got loads. So I think that's quite funny. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, we'll leave it there, I reckon. But thanks, Mark, for being the first guest.
No, my pleasure to be on the pilot.
The pilot of the series, Desert Island Flicks. A chance to talk about films. So carry on writing in the comments about your thoughts about if you watch this later and you want to make comments about what Mark said. Don't be too harsh, it's just his opinion, man. Yeah. And check Mark's channel out. So I think a lot of the commentators are people who watch Mark's stuff, but Mark's got a fantastic channel, Book Time with Elvis. And Elvis, if you don't know, is beautiful dog. And unlike Olive, I don't think Elvis actually reads with Mark.
Oh, so, he does. Well, he doesn't sit by my side and read, but he'll kind of lie down, when I'm reading and stuff. So
in that sense, Elvis is a letdown, right?
Well, he just gets excited when I'm on air, or when I'm doing lessons online, because he, when it's just two of us, he's really placid. He will sit. He'll put his head on my lap. I'll read my book, whatever, and that's it. That's my book time with Elvis. Because when I'm reading, he's with me, of course. But it's just like every time I'm on, he's just racing around doing stuff. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I love it. So yeah, check out Mark's channel if you don't know it, because it's absolutely brilliant, and he will talk about all sorts of different book-related things.
Well, not really. Just 3 Men in a Boat, Treasure Island, and. That is very good. Actually, we have got a few more comments. So out of respect for those, we will go through them. So I recommend The Unforgiven. Yeah, great film. Eastwood version and the Japanese version. Oh, okay. Didn't know there was a Japanese version. Yeah.
They're fantastic to see how versions of a modern Western transcends the genre. Well, yeah, I mean, the Westerns were a big influence on Kurosawa, and Kurosawa then ended up influencing Westerns. So, yeah, it's a funny thing, isn't it? Zulu is awesome. Watch it with Zulu Dawn.
Yeah, Zulu Dawn, yeah.
The Man Who Would Be King. I think you've mentioned that before, haven't you? Yeah. So Dave says bye. Me and Dave have got our show next Thursday as well, everyone, if you're interested. That's a random chat, that one. And Al says later, and Moyd says bye. So there we are. Thank you very much. And that's it. I'm going to say goodbye. Say goodbye, Mark.
Thank you. Bye, Mark.
Okay, bye.